right, what you see here is the final stages of my 944 wiring cleanup project. You're looking at about, maybe 15 hours of work so far. The previous owner had thinned out a couple of the basic cables, but for the most part it was all still stock. So I started by just unbundling everything, right? So all the tape and the friction tape and electrical tape and all that stuff all comes undone. By the way, I thought this is worth showing. This control locking unit or alarm system was over there under the passenger footwell. And if you go to Clark's Garage, you can see the instructions, but you can short these pins. I think it's 1 and 4 and 7 and 8. You can kind of see I've done it here. And I did that just so I could see the wires and make sure that it worked. It did indeed work. So what I did was I connected the wires at the fuse box. I'll show you that in a second. To make this project a little easier too, I started by actually removing the fuse panel from underneath, the driver's side footwell, and we'll go over there next. But what you see here is that all these main cables are probably about a third or roughly of what they used to be. So there's not much wiring left. I also did a push button start. I ordered this through Jegs, a nice little kit with some nice hardware that's ready to go. And of course I took off the steering wheel lock and just got rid of that whole system and possible failure point. Alright, so one more piece. So there's this cable that runs to the back of the car too. A couple pieces that I kept are the fuel sender signal, because I'm going to use that for an aftermarket fuel gauge. I also needed the fuel sender ground, so make sure you find that. You'll need that as well. And I think that's it from there. Notice I've gotten rid of the dash, so the other piece that I saved was the tachometer signal, and that's floating around here somewhere and labeled. I think it's probably green as well. I don't know where it is now. Well, hopefully I can find that later. Okay, so to the front side of the car there is the fuse panel. So this is a 1985 and a half, so it's got the later much easier style panel. You can see here I almost have nothing left. Not really sure what relay X is. Maybe I should pull it and see if it still starts. Haven't tried that yet. Alright, so you can unscrew these tabs here, and once you do that, you'll have access to this whole panel. And then you can start to actually unconnect all of these plugs. I think there's about 10 of them, or 11, or something along those lines. To do that, you need to, let's see if I can get this to focus in a little bit. There it is. So this little thing here slides out completely. Once that's slid out, you can wiggle out all these plugs. This is sort of a locking mechanism, and that'll lock it back in place. And all the plugs are indeed labeled, so if you mix them up, which you certainly will, you can get them back in the same order. That's easy enough to do. But anyway, you can see it's a lot easier. So unplug all these guys, dump them down below that little cave, and then you can start working on them from inside of the car. So basically I removed every wire that wasn't connected to something that was still required. And there's a few wires that I wasn't quite sure about, so I just left those in place. I didn't try to depin them from the harnesses themselves. You can see I just clipped them really short. There is a special tool that is made to actually back out those pins from inside the little connectors. I've done it before in a previous car, and it's really painful. I don't recommend doing it. I read somebody else said they didn't recommend doing it, and I didn't believe them, so I tried it myself, and it hurt. So anyway, that's the project. You can start to see the bundle of crap that I pulled out here, and this is not all of it yet. I still have a few more to go. I didn't weigh it yet, but a pretty good amount of wiring. And ultimately I do this on my race cars because for one is I'm a little bit maniacal about having a clean set of cords and wires that just for visual purposes. More than that, it eliminates potential failure points and lets me troubleshoot more quickly later. The other thing, I found this too, especially in this build, this car being older, there's a few wires that were just, the jacket was coming off. So one of the power wires, for example, had started to decay, and I'm glad I caught that so I could rewrap it and make sure it was nice and secure for later. I didn't touch the DME wiring. Most of that stuff's going to the engine, and I didn't want to touch it. I was afraid of it. So there it sits. There's also another class of cables here that are going to the front of the car. I'm just going to tie them off just in case I ever want to wire up turn signals or something that I don't want to have to try to fish up to the front later, and clearly not much weight savings anyways. So there you have it. There's my project, just about done. Hope this helps. Later.